I'm just going to Hi, I'm Hannah, and I have been a teacher for about 4 years. I teach primary school, and before I became a teacher, I was a teaching assistant for a few years. Whilst I absolutely adore teaching, I really am quite angry about the education system that I work in. And so I'm going to start by reading a poem that I just wrote about what I think is wrong with the system, and then I'm going to sort of tell you some ideas that I have, or that I've heard of other people. So this is called Education. Just by virtue of having been through school, politicians think they know how to deliver education. Of course, everyone's entitled to their opinions, but you wouldn't let someone with a history of being a patient dictate to a surgeon on how to conduct an operation. They gift us with the burden of bureaucracy. It's not enough that we just do our jobs. We must also keep up a paper trail for them to analyse strategically. The admin is ridiculous. It stretches itself across my work's entire breadth. Like they're playing buckaroo with me, casually, increasing the weight of my workload until it can't physically be met. Target tracker, target setting, pupil progress reviews, demanding results with no regard for the intricacies of the children, as if they're collecting on an investment where the interest's overdue. Forcing whole potential into little boxes, denoting children with crude numbers, dictating these equations for us to analyse ethnicity like it's a cost they must recover. Termly tracking for those Afro-Caribbean boys, we have to specifically declare the progress of our white Romanians, our other Afghans, our Somalis too, reel off a list of pupil premium kids for Ofsted and be able to recite our British values. No one in my classroom is British. Everyone claims their pin on the map aside this aisle. The most British thing in my classroom is the redundant context of the new curriculum that Mr. Gove compiled. Last Sats, I administered the Key Stage 2 spelling test to a group of disengaged 11-year-olds who really couldn't have cared less. One of the spellings was postage, as in the sentence, the postage was surprisingly cheap. I saw eyes panicked with confusion, sweaty fingers making beryl pens slip. Once the envelope of silence had lifted and the test complete, they asked, "What was that weird word you said, miss?" Not one of them had ever posted a letter. Some only recognised the letter as a symbol for an email. This redundant words inclusion set them up to fail. We aren't given the time to teach these kids the things that they really need. It feels like we are just perpetuating political ambitions through curriculum decrees, written by out-of-date ministers who can't put themselves in the souls of these streets, so they trod on them, those trapped at the bottom, leaving creativity and well-being underneath the pile of things long forgotten, and yet the child is supposed to be at the centre of this equation, but not these particular children in front of me, no. Some made-up spectre of a privately educated man's imagination. They've come over all Tony Blair, crying out, education, education, education. So what I'm basically saying is the government is fucking everything up. Because innovation springs from ground level and they're not listening as their incompetence cripples as it trickles down from the top.
Yeah.
There was a lot of educational kind of terminology and that of some of the things that we have to do. And whilst I really do actually hate the system that I work in, I love teaching and I love the children. And I've been teaching for 4 years, but I just spent the last year having this really kind of happy sabbatical as a supply teacher. And I got to go to lots of different schools and teach lots of different age groups and really gain a lot of experience of the education system and things that are working, which are really amazing. The reason why I decided to come back into sort of permanent class teaching is because of something that Christopher Emden said. He wrote this book called, it's escaped my mind, I don't have it really.
White folks in teaching hood and
for white folks in teaching hood, and it's all about sort of hip-hop education, which actually me, Pope Curious and Thomas, we all kind of attend these lectures and meetings, which happen kind of semi-frequently. And one of the things that he said in his book is that we have to infiltrate these systems to recalibrate them. And actually, Pope Curious, you said once to me, which really sort of stuck with me, is that if you're a teacher who can actually function within these systems and toe the line enough to not draw too much attention to yourself, but kind of stop. You can limit the damage that the system is doing to these young people in any way. And that you've got a responsibility to actually be in that classroom rather than just giving up and leaving someone else to do it. Because kids actually need people that realise what the system is doing to them is wrong. And yeah, so or better even innovate it. Because yeah. Anyway, last night I had this amazing conversation with this guy called Andre Anderson, who is the founder of Authors of London, which is an amazing sort of writing project that started on St Raphael's Estate in Brent. And he came to my writing group in Harlesden, and I was telling him about tonight, and he was like, so do you know the etymology of the word education? And I was like, no, I really don't. Etymology is the study of like the roots of words, and he was saying, education actually means to like rear up, to bring out the best in something. And like there's this idea about education that like students are empty vessels, and we as teachers, we're filling them up. But that's been refuted since the 60s. But he was saying that in his mind, like students are the seeds, and education is the sun and the soil. So we've got to really be aware that like our students are co-creators, they're collaborators in their education process, and we really need to be aware that it's a teacher's responsibility to figure out how best to engage their students, to find out what interests them and try to make the curriculum as relevant to who they're teaching. But the government keeps dictating these fucked up things that are completely fucking irrelevant. It's really hard. It's really hard to find that balance between doing what you actually have to do as a public service worker and doing what's best for the children in front of you. You see as a supply teacher, I got to see lots of like early years practice, so looking at nursery school children and like reception, and the philosophy of teaching there is amazing. It's all child-led, it's really like open and they can choose, it's really thematic, it's so easy to engage and educate children when they have chosen what they're doing and they're already like doing something with it. You can, like if they're counting, you can be like take one away or add one more, and instantly they're learning, but they don't realise it. It just feels so natural and fluid, and they get so much chance to play. And as soon as a child comes out of reception and goes into year one, the toys are put away and the pencils are taken out, and it's so sad to see that 11-year-olds love playing. Like, why aren't we letting children play? Yeah. Because we have to teach them for the grammar test.
5 years' time.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, actually, I don't want to talk for too long, so I hope you're like keeping around the time. Yeah, another thing that I was talking to Andre about last night was he was saying that he's studied like some different ways of creative learning, and some of those are like learning through metaphor. Like really successful learners, or a really successful way of creative learning is like learning through metaphor and storytelling, and having what you're learning be able to be applied to your life, like having everyday application to what you're learning. And I think that's something that I really want to develop in my practice. Like metaphor is like the oldest way to teach things. If you look at Plato and even Jesus, they talk through metaphors. And that's why I think like teaching poetry is so important, because you arm children with the skills to sort of like describe and interpret the world as they see, and I think that's really, really important. And storytelling, it's like you give children ownership of their experiences and their knowledge when they're able to translate it into their own story. So if you look at allegories, like Plato's allegory of the cave, like that's just an amazing way of teaching everyone about perception of reality. And I actually had that taught to me in college by a theology teacher who taught that through the lens of the Matrix, which was just incredible. Yeah, so what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I think it's really ridiculous that on the new SATs that the Year 6 children have to do at the end of primary school, there is no story writing element to it anymore. Rather than having examiners examine like a piece of creative writing the children have written and assess their grammar through that, they have to do like this really dry, long, tricky grammar test, which is completely out of context of the language that children use and even that teachers are aware of. Like, they've literally rechristened grammatical terms just for this test. And I actually had an insert on grammar the other day because it's the new academic year, and I found out I've been teaching something wrong for my entire practice. But it wasn't wrong until this new grammar test came out, right? So when you're teaching kind of early punctuation, sort of like 7 and 8 year olds, you teach them, a statement finishes with a full stop. A question finishes with a question mark, and an exclamation finishes with an exclamation mark. So, my children will be writing these different things, and they said, "Oh my God," it's an exclamation. Yeah, well done. "I can't believe it," it's an exclamation. Not anymore. If something is to be classed as an exclamation under the new grammar system, it must begin with a how or a what, as in, "What a wonderful day." And in the middle of this inset, the inset was led by the woman who was in charge of grading children for the whole borough of Brent. And I was like, why are we, that sounds like some 1960s Enid Blyton nonsense. Who talks like that? Why are we teaching that? And she was like, well, it's your obligation as a teacher to give these children the opportunity to prove that they can do these things. I actually set back loads of children last year because their teachers hadn't given them the opportunity to use an exclamation properly. And I was like, what are we doing?
Exclamation.
What a ridiculous thing to do. So it's just absolutely ridiculous that can go on. And I think it's really important to have children be able to apply what they're learning to their lives. We need to teach more life skills in schools. They don't need to know. They don't need to know so much. I don't know. I wouldn't call it nonsense, but obviously we need to teach children how to read. But there's a lot of facts that they can learn from the internet and encourage their own interests, and we need to teach them creativity and how to develop their own characters and understand their own cultural identities and things like that, rather than exclamations. That's all my points that I can remember. So thank you very much for visiting. I can't wait to hear what Thomas and Chris are going to say, and thank you very much.